You got some problems that you wanna solve? Then let's chat. That job getting on your nerves? Then let's chat. Girl, you know I can relate, so let's chat. Cause I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom line is. I'ma tell you what the bottom.
It's your girl Cece. I'm your hostess with the mostest.
I'ma tell you what the bottom line is.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of The Bottom Line Is. It's your girl Cece, hostess with the mostest, and we are so glad that you are back joining us. And today's guest is my friend Heather, and she is a military vet and spouse. So we have something amazing coming to you today where we're going to basically talk about how to find your purpose and talk about your identity as a military spouse, because sometimes we can get lost in other people's ventures and things of that nature. So I expect that it'll be some transferable items too that everybody can take away. So with that being said, Heather, can you tell the people a little bit about yourself?
I would love to, but first of all, let me thank you for having me on. I appreciate you so much for hosting this topic.
Yes, no, for sure. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, so I'm an Army veteran. I joined at 18. I did a little over 6 years to include a deployment to Iraq. During that 6 years, I met my husband, who was also serving in the Army. I got out. He continued on to do his 20s. So I never thought that I would be an Army wife. I would have bet money against it. We had a whole plan where he was going to get out. And that actually plays very much into what we're going to talk about today.
Okay.
But yeah, so he did his 20 and I, alongside him in that time, we had 2 kids who are now an 11-year-old boy and a 9-year-old girl. And many, many moves, many pets, all of the things later. We have done our first retirement, meaning military retirement.
Okay.
When you retire from the military, you don't retire, period, across the board.
Gotcha.
But first retirement in Huntsville, Alabama, of all places. And I only say of all places because I'm originally from Syracuse, New York. So that is a weird thing for me.
Okay. Got it.
But, I mean, I think that's probably the basics.
No, for sure. So, well, again, thank you for you and your husband's service. So it's important to note that too. So thanks for that background. But when you retired and, your spouse continued to stay in the military, did you, struggle to get back into the civilian life? Like talk about that transition.
So not initially. So what happened was when I first got out of the Army, it was very close to the time when my husband was going to his next duty station. So we landed in Northern Virginia, and that's a great place to get a job. There was so much job opportunity there. And so I actually got into working as a government contractor initially. And it was actually a really easy transition. It didn't take much for me to get a job and really settle in and start doing my thing. That led to a lot of great opportunities. It led to promotions. It led to an opportunity to move into I was a government contractor and I moved into actual government position, which at the time, you're thinking, we're talking like decades ago, at the time was, it was a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's why words evading me.
Is it like competitive, you mean, to get?
No. It was safe.
Yeah. Government is a safe place.
It was at the time. As this is coming out, things are very different today. But at the time, there was just a lot of opportunity for me to be where I was, and so it was actually a really great position. Okay. It wasn't until much later that things got tossed in the air, so we can talk about that.
Gotcha. Okay. So, I guess for me, I feel like I know I had one of my friends, one of my close friends, she was a military spouse and she spent time in Germany and then coming back to the US. And she would always tell me sometimes or vent that she just felt like she lost herself. And, we talked a lot about trying to overcome that. She also worked for the government when she came back into the States. But she just struggled with having to always move because it wasn't like her job was, it didn't provide a transfer. So it's kind of like you're starting all over and having to explain that story. Any tips for people to kind of overcome that mindset?
So the thing is, so yeah, every single time
Mhm.
you move with the military,
Right.
you've got to start over. Every once in a while is, I mean, and now I'm an entrepreneur, so my stories become very different. But early on, that was one of the first major hurdles that we experienced was I was in a government position and it was a great position. And
Mhm.
I really thought that I was going to at some point retire from the government.
Right.
And we got to my husband's next duty station and we were on hiring freeze.
Mm.
So there was no position for me to move
Gotcha.
into or apply for anything. Now there would have potentially been at some point, but we decided we wanted to have our first kid. So during the time I got pregnant, by the time the hiring freeze lifted, nobody was hiring my baby bump. That just wasn't going to happen.
Right.
So that was the first major hurdle was not having that smooth transition. Had I been stayed where I was, I would have continued in that position and climbed the ladder, so to speak.
Mhm.
But with that move, that option was eliminated for me due to circumstances.
Right.
And that one thing alone is what shifted everything. So when I got pregnant, I started thinking for the first time in my life, maybe I want to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And we agreed that that is what I would do, knowing that I was going to have to give up my job every few years, go through the hassle. And now I've recently learned there's a statistic. It takes approximately, now this is an average, right?
Okay.
4 months for military spouses to get a job at each new duty station.
Wow.
Right. And some of us don't want that. And for some it's quicker, for some it's a lot longer, but on average about 4 months. That's for military wives.
Right.
Military husbands is a little bit of a different statistic. They tend to get jobs faster. But that's it for us. And I was like, I don't want that. I don't want to have to wait and scramble and all the things every time we move. So I decided to be a stay-at-home mom. That is very much where I really started to realize I was missing a piece of me. Like I lost my identity, so to speak. I
Mhm.
wasn't pursuing something outside the household that I was passionate about or that gave my life a different level of meaning. And so I was a military spouse, which was important to me. I was a mom, which was very important to me. I was a wife, which was incredibly important to me. But I wasn't doing something for me.
Right.
And that's where I started to go, I'm missing something. I'm not completely fulfilled. Like, there's a piece of me that's not there. And there was just
Mhm.
that hole. And it got pretty bad at some
Mhm.
points.
No, and so how did you, get through that process? I know you talked about being an entrepreneur, so like I guess talk about that transition from stay-at-home
Mhm.
mom to being stay-at-home mom while doing entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So I'm going to keep it as succinct as possible because it was a really long journey, is what it was.
Okay.
And my entry point was something, I don't know if you're familiar with multi level marketing or direct sales. It's not really entrepreneurship per se, but they tell you it is. So
Mhm.
I had a friend introduce me to a multi level marketing company, and that was my introduction.
Okay.
What happened though along the way is I decided it wasn't for me, but I really did like the idea of having my own business and starting something that belonged to me and
Yeah.
being able to do something from home while I was also raising my kids. So I had that flexibility is kind of
Yeah.
essential for most
Important.
of us as military
Yeah.
spouses. And so that attended to that. And so I opened my first Etsy shop, and that was my real entry point into entrepreneurship. It was when I started doing something for me though, somewhere along the ways of going into multi-level marketing and starting to transition to actual entrepreneurship. It was then when I was like, oh, I'm actually doing something that feeds my soul. Not that being a mom and being a spouse doesn't feed your soul, but when you're independent and you've already been out there doing the thing, building something for
Mhm.
you, and it was what you wanted, and then it's gone,
Yeah.
that's where you're like, Where's the thing? Something's missing." So when I started getting okay with claiming, because there's guilt, right? Like being
Mhm.
a mom isn't enough for you.
Right.
I've heard people say that. I've felt
Yeah.
it. And no,
Right. Yeah.
no, it wasn't. It really wasn't. It wasn't because my kids aren't everything to me.
Mhm.
Deep down in my soul, it's not because being a mother wasn't fulfilling. It's because it wasn't the only thing.
Right.
And you gotta be okay with saying that out loud because that's a scary thing to say out loud. There's so
Yeah.
much fear of judgment.
Yeah, I was gonna say that the fear of judgment and,
Mhm.
other people saying, well, why wouldn't you be say mom? That's the best job in the world.
For some it is, and I
Yeah,
honor that, but
right.
it's for some it's not, and it's not okay for us to judge that.
Correct. No, I applaud you for that, and thank you
Thank
for
you.
bringing that up.
Yeah.
Now, when you did make that jump, like talk about. I know you said your husband was supportive. Did you like support groups being a military spouse? Like how does that work and how it shaped the person that you are today?
So it took me a long time to find my military spouse community.
Okay.
What I did in the interim, though, not knowing that that was a community I needed to be looking for, because that was a community that was going to serve me so deeply and that I'd be able to serve so deeply. But in the interim, I still was getting into communities. So I was an Etsy shop owner. So I was getting into communities with other Etsy shop owners. And so there was that level of support. Yes, it's hard. That customer complained, and I don't know why. I'm doing everything I can to make them happy, and they're still stomping all over me. And this feels like crap, and that's where you get to lean into that community. And so that's where I started. And so there was that beautiful level of support on the hard days, because it is such, when you're doing it by yourself, we call, solopreneurs,
Hmm.
it is such a lonely place to be
Right.
sometimes. And so that is where I started to find my community there. It wasn't until more recently, over like the last couple. So now that my first Etsy shop I opened in 2018.
Oh wow.
And so it wasn't until just a couple of years ago where I really started to find the military spouse entrepreneur communities. And I started to learn about all of the support and resources and everything that are available to us specifically. And that's where so much more changed for me. And like, it was like everything, the opportunity just expanded exponentially when I found those communities.
Yeah,
And
no,
so,
that's what they say when everybody gets together, like the opportunities are endless,
yes.
essentially. And that's amazing. Like how did you find that type of group? So
Facebook.
okay,
Facebook.
okay. Maybe that's
Yeah, so
beautiful.
I think what I was doing was I was just searching for military spouses or
Okay.
military spouse business owners. I'm not even sure exactly what I searched for, but I came upon one, and then I realized, okay, there are more of them out there. So there's a couple that I'm just really closely integrated with. They're the ones that I found to be the most like resource heavy, the most supportive. And I loved one of those communities so much. I wanted to build a local chapter for that one. So I actually started a local chapter for one of the military spouse entrepreneur communities that I'm a part of.
No, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, from your extended family support, how does that look, or how did it look? If you can kind of go into that as you made your different transitions.
Yeah. So the unique thing about military spouses, well, military life, not totally unique, right? Because other people move around the country.
Right.
But the thing that you're going to guarantee with most military is we're going to move around the country, around the globe. So I didn't have my extended family physically
Hmm.
around to support. So if I needed a break to do, like if I needed somebody to watch the kids so that I could work, that wasn't an option to lean into family. Um, I was in Washington State or Tennessee or Alabama, and my family was in New York, or my husband's family is in South Carolina. So it was very much there was emotional support from them.
Hmm.
I will say that I am grateful. My mom has always been my biggest cheerleader. She just believes in me through and through. And so there's always that level of support. I have a little brother. He's my only sibling. And so it's always been kind of like a little brother looks up to big
Yeah.
sister situation between the two of us. But he's always believed in me and encouraged me and made me feel just like powerful and capable and all of those things because of the way that he viewed me. So I definitely had that in my life. So, not having them locally, but definitely having them to be
That's
there.
important. Emotional support is people, don't realize that, but that is very important. And your face just lit up when you talked about how they support you, and I love it.
I appreciate that because,
Yeah, no,
it's family. Sometimes we do take it for granted, and I don't
yeah,
always get asked that question. So, kind of saying it out loud reminds you
yeah,
of what
no, for
you had
sure.
available to you.
No, I agree with that because yeah, we get so focused on certain things, but yeah, no, that's awesome, and I get it for sure. So, and then what about friendships? So we talked about family and support group. How do you navigate friendships in military life?
So I'm very outgoing, if you haven't noticed.
We love to
I will meet somebody, think that they have like really cool energy, and I'll be like, "Hey, do you want to go do coffee with me?" And if they say no, I'm cool. Like I'm one of those people, I can let it roll off my back and I'm fine. I've never actually had anybody say no. I think most people are
yeah.
open to that. Um, so I am grateful that I have the personality that I'm not afraid to ask a person if you want to be friends with me. I mean, it's
Right.
not like when we're in first grade, I'm like, hey, do you want to be friends? But it kind of
Like,
is,
hey,
right? Like,
guess
do you want
my
to have
check bill.
coffee with me as a way of saying, do you want to be friends with me?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
to me, that's a method that, like you said, people forget about. Like I don't know, like how society's mindset is going. I guess now to social media, but something just as simple, just having a conversation with somebody, that you never met before, just out there. I don't. People just forget, or they don't know how to,
Mhm.
socialize and have conversations outside of social media. I guess we kind of use it as a mask in a sense. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
But
no, for
yeah,
sure.
and I will say though, every time I've moved, I have integrated myself into the new location. So I would go to the military, the
Mhm.
gyms that were available on the installation. So that was a great way to meet other military spouses. A lot of times your neighbors are military in
Yeah.
those situations. So always getting to know my neighbors. But when I've been in locations where I didn't have as many friends available for whatever reason, or I was in a particularly tough spot in life and I wasn't feeling energized to go meet new people, I have actually met a ton of really incredible women online too, who sometimes I don't speak to for months. And then suddenly they show up in my inbox and they're like, I thought of you, or they say something encouraging. And so, you can have both. You can have your communities online and you can have your in person communities.
No,
I think
that's
you
awesome.
should.
And that's what I say too about this podcast. When people say, "Oh, describe your podcast," I say, imagine that start talking to somebody you haven't talked to in a while, a long lost friend, but you can pick right up where you left off, and you talk about everything over dinner or happy hour or coffee or whatever the case is. So that's essentially what the podcast is too. So it's a true thing. Again, community, that support, that's what makes the world go round. That's what energizes you. That's what fills you up and makes you feel good, to get through life.
It is. It is, and they're gonna be the people that show you your strengths that you're not aware of. Like, so many of us have incredible things about ourselves, and we're so used to just, like, not accepting the compliment, not tooting
Yeah,
our
that
own
imposter
horn for
syndrome.
fear of being conceited or,
Mhm.
something like that. But those are the people who are going to show you your strengths and remind you, "You're not showing up that way. I don't know what you're afraid of, but you like, girl, you have a light.
Yeah,
Stop dimming it." And so you do, to your point, you absolutely have to lean into your community. You've got to have those people and allow them to celebrate you and support you in all the things.
yeah, no, for sure. And that's what we need to do more of as a community: celebrate
Yeah.
each other's successes instead of trying to, tear people down. We need to
Yes.
build people up.
Mhm.
So that's a practice that we all need to practice.
True.
Especially. So, and well, that kind of took my last question about encouragement. So we just said that.
Just
That's how,
snatched it from you.
yeah, I love it though. I love it. But is there anything else that you think that in that transition, that people should know, far as transitioning into the military life, or even coming out of, I guess I would say coming out the military life, but I mean, I don't know, is that the right phrase to use? I don't, you correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't think it's a wrong phase. It
Okay.
just depends on everybody's phase of life, right? I mean,
Right.
some of us are in it in like we're a retired family now, so we're on
Right.
the other side of it. But yeah, transitioning out of the military, transitioning to a new duty station, it's military lifestyle. You're going to have transitions, period.
Mhm.
Whatever that phase is, it doesn't matter. You're going to have transitions.
Right.
And so, because that we're talking about kind of the center of this, I get a little lost in it and all the details sometimes, but the center of this was how we can tend to lose our identity.
Hmm.
So, I mean, and that's true for military spouses. That's also true for moms. That's true for caregivers. That's true for most women. I
Everyone.
can't
Yeah.
speak for
Because
men, but
we wear
that's
we wear a lot of hats, so we can, we like to give 110% to anything that we do. That's just our nature, for sure.
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, I could speak to just about any woman right now,
Hmm.
military affiliated or not. you feel like you have lost your sense of self or lost your identity or however you want to phrase that, there's something that's missing, something that you're not attending to that's like screaming for you, even if it's like maybe it's just quiet right now because you've been ignoring it for so long, but there's something that's nagging at you, something's not fulfilled in you.
Huh?
There's two things that I think initially have to happen. One,
Mhm.
most of us are afraid to even give ourselves permission to explore it. So
Uh-huh.
sometimes we need to hear it from an outside source.
Right.
So even though I don't think you need my permission, sometimes that is like the catalyst, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you, you have permission to do the thing that speaks to you, even if it's not the same role as being a spouse or a military spouse or a mom or a caregiver for that matter, right? Even
Mhm.
if it's outside of those roles, you still get to claim the other things that matter to you. The second part is give yourself permission now to do that. That's a really hard thing to do. It sounds simple, but it's not. It can be a really hard thing for people to do. So I would encourage you, now that you have heard it, you're allowed to do that thing. Give yourself permission.
No, for sure. And, I was saying it a little bit earlier too, that imposter syndrome, no
Mhm.
matter what phase of life that you're in, it can be a real thing. And, that's that self doubt. But believing in yourself, if we fail, the good thing is that we can dust ourselves off and try again.
Yeah.
It's never like, oh, I failed, I'm done. Like, no, you got to keep going until
Yeah.
something sticks. Right.
Yeah.
So, and I'm sure you probably had experience with that. I mean, I think being an entrepreneur, you're not going to make your first few sales in the first 30 days. It takes time. You have to put in work. Nothing is just going to, happen instantly. I know a lot of us like instant gratification. I know
Yeah.
I'm one of those type of people, but I'm working on it.
I'm I mean, I'm in that circle too. Like,
Yeah.
I like to see results. Come on, give me something. But okay, so let me say something really quick to that.
Yeah.
That's a huge thing for
Yeah.
people. Like I started a new thing. Like I started a new workout. I started a new eating regimen where I'm trying to lose weight. I started a new business. So I'd like to have immediate results, please. And the fact of the matter is you're probably not going to. It's far and few in between where you see those people who have amazing immediate results in any of the things. They stand out to you because they're the exception. But
Right.
most of us are not experiencing any kind of immediate results in business or otherwise. So, the key to there's a lot of keys to keeping motivated. The one thing that I would tell you right now is find the small things that you can celebrate. It doesn't have to be the major milestones that you've reached, right? If you want to keep propelling yourself and stay motivated to doing the thing, so in the long term, you really can experience that big, exciting payoff, celebrate the little things that are happening between now and then,
Yeah. And I
right?
think that's an important tip because people miss that, you know,
Yeah,
they
and
miss
it's easy
that
to get discouraged.
tremendously. Yeah. And it's like, why not? You did good. Like, pat yourself on the back. It's okay to give again grace. It's okay to do that,
Yes.
as well. So it's not being cocky, it's not being any of those
Mhm.
things. You put in the work and you deserve to be recognized for it.
Yeah.
Whatever that looks like, just like being, a mom. You
Mhm.
work hard every day with the kids to make sure that they have whatever they need and that you stay organized and all those different type of things. Congratulate yourself, you know? So,
100%.
no, so again, yes, getting back to the finding your identity and things of that nature. Anything else that you would recommend for people that may kind of be on that seesaw of trying to find their identity or wanting to give up because they're like, I don't know if I can handle this. It's too much for me to handle. Anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I'm gonna share a cliche here, but it's because it's my favorite, and I truly 100% believe it with all of my being. If that doesn't emphasize it enough for you, I don't know what to say.
I love a
But
cliche. I love one. Go ahead.
where there's a will, there's a way.
Mm,
If and I like to add a second thing to that. If
okay.
you want it, it's already yours. So there is going to be I feel confident in saying there is a path for you to get to it. You just have to open up your kind of your perspective on what that looks like. So if you're like tunnel vision, it's got to look like this. I have to fit it into this package here and it can only fit in this space. You're putting too much pressure on yourself. Open up the possibilities of what it could like to get there, but own the fact that if you want it, it is there for you to have.
No, I think that was a great cliche and very meaningful. And I say that a lot to people too, because you have to be open-minded, because otherwise, you're missing out. And when you really learn and understand that concept, and then you try it and you see all of the possibilities, coming your way and things of that nature, and how the difference in how you feel about it, you're like, oh, I should have did this a long time ago. I should have felt like this a long time ago.
Yes. Why did I wait so long? Why wasn't I doing this?
Yeah,
Yes.
no, that is for sure. So, well, anything else you want to add before we close out? Because I'm looking at you as the expert in this field for sure. So if we missed anything, please feel free to share.
I appreciate that so much. I think there's about a million and one more things that I could say.
Hmm.
But I think I'm just going to reiterate something that
Hmm.
I've already said is we hold ourselves back for so many reasons. I don't think I'm capable. I'm not ready. It's selfish. There's no space for that, which is essentially you're saying there's no space for me to do the
Hmm.
thing that I love, to feel important. Right. And so I want to go back to, you get to claim it for you, but you have to give yourself permission. So please do that right now. Give yourself permission to claim the thing that matters to you. And if you don't know the way forward, that's what mentors are for. That's what coaches are for. That's what communities are for. You just need to take that next step and go, who can help me get there?
Hmm.
Lean into that person. And I promise you, the way forward is going to start to show itself.
No, for sure. And so, I know you have a podcast, and I want you to talk a little bit about that,
Yeah.
because if we have military spouses watching, I want this conversation to go beyond, this time. So if you can share a little bit about the podcast, the name of it, and, essentially what you talk about there.
Thank you. Yes. So actually, I have a podcast and a YouTube channel, which is essentially the exact same information. It's just two different ways to consume it. So, depending on whether you like to watch a video or you just like to listen to the thing in the background while you're washing dishes or taking a walk. So my YouTube channel is Heather Jones Coaching. If
Okay.
you prefer to consume it on podcast, it's Purpose, Power, and Productivity, a Mompreneur's Mission.
I'm loving that, the 3 Ps.
Thank you. I love alliteration. I've got like D3, P3, all the things.
No, for sure. So if I go onto your YouTube, what am I going to find?
So hopefully what I've been aiming to provide is
Mhm.
tons of inspiration, um, it's a sense of empowerment, but lots of really good tips of how you can actually move forward. So like, like, what do you call it? Like it's not coming to me. Forget it. Just get
Oh,
rid of it.
yeah,
Get
I'll get
rid
rid
of
of that.
that thought.
I will.
Essentially, you're going to get a ton of really, really good tips, a lot of empowerment, and a ton of inspiration from it. It's very much centered around women who are building businesses, but as a I'm not a business coach per se. I'm a life coach. So I also attend to the, how do you make this work in your real life scenario?
Mhm.
How do you make it flow? So I like the phrase, like work-life balance. Some people don't
Mhm.
love it. Work-life flow, harmony. I don't care what you use, but it's going to be all of the ways that you make your work, your life, all of the things flow well, so that you can continue to have all of the things in life that you want to have.
No, for sure. And I do love the phrase work-life balance. Every HR person does.
Okay, okay, I love that.
And that's something, far as caregiving too, that I talk about as well, making sure you have that balance
Yeah.
as well. But no, I appreciate that. And if you want to know more about being your own business owner and doing things along those lines, definitely reach out to her and watch those episodes. I know I learned a lot. I watched a few episodes prior to us recording, and just like my podcast, it goes from one end to the other, and it is amazing to watch. So thank you so much, Heather. Anything else? Any other handles that you want to share before we end it?
I'm on a lot of the social media platforms, but honestly, my favorite place to show up and where you're going to get the most energy from me is YouTube, or either on the podcast. So if you're curious about connecting with me in other places, Heather Jones Coaching is where I am basically everywhere. So.
Cool. Got it. So with that, I'll say the bottom line is, again, allow yourself the permission, give yourself the permission, allow yourself to have that grace, because you can be anything that you want to be. And I know that's a cliche, but you can really do anything that you put your mind to. And, don't settle for less. If you hear that little voice in the background that is telling you that you can do more, you were made for a bigger purpose, then go ahead. The time is now. So make sure you like, comment, and